dared to make her cry while he wiped away her tears. But Larry lied that she didn't cry, but simply missed Asher and hugged him. Asher knew perfectly well that she was lying. Asher suggested going home, but Larry wondered if she even had a home. She was already glad that she was terminally ill. A few days later, Asher noticed that Larry had been acting rather strange lately before going out. Asher himself asked for today's dose of hugs. Larry, depressed, agreed and sadly hugged him and left. This is what Asher meant. He would like to be close to her. But today, a significant military meeting is being held in the palace in which he is obliged to take part. He would like her to tell him everything, because he is her lover. At this time, Larry was sitting by the balcony and reading a letter in which it was written that she was sorry that this became her first letter to Larietta. She only did this because the Duchess begged her, but she promises her that this will not happen again. The letter was from Genevieve Charbet, and Larry began to read her mother's letter, in which she wrote that she was sorry that their meeting ended this way. She would like to tell her a lot. In the letter, she asked to give her another chance. She said that she would be waiting for her at the restaurant today at 5 in the evening. Larry angrily crumpled her mother's letter and sadly asked why she should see her now, poor girl. Some mothers take advantage of their position and deliberately torture their children. And of course the child will want to return to his mother, because children always hope for a good relationship with their mother, even with someone like her. When Larry sat down at the table, her mother playfully handed her the dish, telling her to try it. Even though it was cold, it should still be delicious. However, Larry recalled how she shouted at her to know when to eat in moderation, because at this rate, she would get fat and scary, and Rayon would hate eating with her. That's why, from that moment on, they brought food to her chambers, and Larry said that in the letter she wrote that she wanted to tell her something. Her mother replied that she had a lot to ask for forgiveness from, so she didn't know where to start, but most of all, she repented of not paying her proper attention. She claimed that she realized that she was dear to her only when she lost her. When she left home, she was in great shock. No one cares about her, and her father constantly reproaches her, saying that she is no housewife. It seems that she should have apologized to Larry, but so far she is only feeling sorry for herself. The Duchess said that now she realized everything. She was the only person who was with her in difficult times. How petty. Of course, this made Larry incredibly sad, while her mother continued to whine about her personal problems and how unhappy she was. Larry finally realized that her mother didn't even think about the pain she caused her. She said that she listened to her, but she had no plans to return to their home, and before she left, her mother said that she was really sorry. Larry didn't understand what her mother meant, but when she turned around, many hands came out of the shadows, knocking her out and holding her down. Her mother betrayed Larry again, and the vile old man told her that her daughter, who had run away from home, could not be brought back with an apology. When Larry woke up, she was already in handcuffs, and not in simple ones, but in those that block her magic. These monsters handcuffed their daughter. She hadn't had a bite in her mouth since last night, so her strength had completely dried up. Poor Larry was again locked in the room in front of the huge door. She thought that now she would never get out, when suddenly Anne knocked and asked how she was. Anne sadly said that she must be hungry. Larry lied that she was fine and asked how Anne was feeling. She answered what they were doing now. Friends who were so desperately trying to help each other. Anne said that the Duke seemed terribly angry. He shouted loudly that she would not be well in the morning. This did not even surprise Larry. Then Anne burst into tears and said that she would definitely find a way to help her. Larry asked her not to do anything. She was worried about her. Anne said that when Larry left the estate, she was very worried that she could not do anything for her. She said she didn't want to have any regrets, so she asked him to help her in some way. Therefore, she decided to talk to the wizard Giol and steal the key. Larry was worried about her friend and asked her not to do anything. But Anne had already run away anyway, and she just sat down by the door. But when her father opened the door, she fell to the floor. Larry saw Rayon's face, which was beaten, and immediately thought that although she did not know the details, she was sure that he deserved it. The Marquis said that he locked her up so that she would think about her behavior, but he just doesn't see a drop of remorse in her eyes. Larry stood up and told him straight out that she had nothing to repent of. She confidently said that she had done nothing wrong. Then the mad father hit Larry the first time, then grabbed him and hit him harder the second time. For Larry, his blows resembled a thunderstorm. Larry fell to the floor, and the Marquis told her that he spent so much on her. and in gratitude she dared to run away to the monster Duke, and now looks down on her father. The little bastard stood back and gloated over his sister's pain, while the Marquis shouted that she dared to set that bastard, meaning Escher, on her brother. The Marquis added that if she did not apologize, she would not see freedom, and left. Then the vile Rayon approached the beaten Larry. He picked her up and asked if she realized how much he was hurt because of her. Larry looked at him with a fierce look, a similar look from Asher. Larry quickly bit his hands until they bled, and the cowardly boy fell and immediately began to shake. He immediately ran out shouting that she should be locked up immediately, and that after living with the Duke, she had also gone crazy. Standing at the door was Giol, the wizard and teacher of this house. He glanced at Larry before closing the door. Larry lay on the cold floor, hungry, beaten. She remembered happy moments with Asher and, crying, said that she missed him. Suddenly, Anne shouted that he had arrived, and already downstairs Duke Candel came for Larry. The Marquise quickly ran downstairs to Escher and began to ask displeasedly why he had not announced his arrival in advance. He complained that this was contrary to the rules of etiquette. Gerard rudely asked if he realized who he was talking to, and Asher stated that he was here to pick up his lover. The Marquise asked that he mustered up the courage to show up here and declares that he is going to steal his daughter. Asher said that he doesn't want any trouble and he will do whatever he says if he gives Larry back to him. Larry was in her room, got up and asked what Anne was talking about, and whether it was true that Asher had come specifically for her. Anne said that Giol wrote a letter to the Duke and secretly sent it to him. Larry went to the window and saw Escher, and decided that she should not just stand there, and tore out the curtains. After breaking the window, she called out to Asher and simply jumped off the balcony. Her teacher quickly placed a shield next to her to protect her, and Asher spread out his arms to catch her. Having caught Larry, he looked at her face, and seeing the bruises, he asked who dared to touch her. Escher is surrounded by a dark aura, which greatly frightened the Marquis, and he declared that he was not going to show mercy. But Larry pulled him to her and she said that she wanted to return home to their house, and Asher, smiling, agreed with her. When they approached the carriage, her father began to shout where they were going, and fell silent as soon as he saw Asher's gaze. And Larry thanked her teacher. He was always on her side. He brought Larry home, and in bed she asked him to hug her. Asher thought that she was so hurt, and at the same time he did not try to blame her, but even thanked her. Asher was going to raze the Blanchet estate to the ground because they dared to take Larry away from him, and he apologized for coming so late. Larry asked if she could kiss him now. She admitted that she really wanted it, and Asher replied that he didn't mind at all. And Asher kissed her, then threw her onto the bed, continued to kiss her, and when Larry quietly called his name, he asked if that was enough for her. But then he admitted that he had completely missed it and asked if he could continue. Asher said that no matter how much he kissed her, she would never be enough for him. He himself thought that if he could, he would swallow her all, from head to toe, and would make her his, and Larry looked at Asher for the first time and admitted that she loved him. She was worried that she was truly falling in love with Asher, even though she knew how it would all end. And even despite the circumstances, she still fell in love with him, and Asher, after kissing her, also admitted that he loved her. Every night in his dreams there are only thoughts about her. For the first time in his life, he eagerly falls asleep, waiting for the dawn. For the first time, he realizes the value of every day her words can send him to heaven or plunge him into the depths of hell. When she hurts, his heart is torn to shreds, and no words can describe his feelings for her. Therefore, he will simply truly love her to the point of madness. Asher climbed on Larry. Asher wondered if he could do this. In his state, he admitted that he was beginning to lose patience. He wanted to master her so much. But the time is not yet. So he will hold back with all his might. They are afraid that his curse may taint her. They stood up, and Larry said that she was ready to wait for him as long as necessary. And just as they were about to kiss, the butler came to them. It turns out that Doha had already come to her, and seeing her wounds, he asked who dared to do such a thing to her. He said that he asked her to be careful, but she did not seem to listen to his words at all, as he noticed that she did not have a bracelet on her wrist. Larry realized that he noticed this and, hiding her hand, said that she felt sorry for wearing that bracelet, because it was so beautiful. Doha was angry that she was in trouble, but he didn't know. Then he pulled her to him and began treatment. Before Doha could finish talking about her lover, Larry shouted that he had absolutely nothing to do with it. She said that she was simply kidnapped. Doha replied that he had not said anything yet, and he thought that just a few days ago he had sworn an oath that he would protect her. He thought that this hurt his pride, although Duke Kandel was also powerless. The treatment quickly helped Larry. Her wounds slowly disappeared, and Doha stood up and asked if it hurt anywhere else. When she replied that everything was fine, he asked from that moment on to wear this bracelet. Only with constant contact with her skin would its healing properties be realized. It looked like there were still traces of the wounds on her face. Larry replied that everything was fine. She was just a little swollen, and Doha asked to be patient a little longer. The wound was quite strong. Doha thought that she might hate him if he was too persistent. Although for him it would be even better than nothing, he initially did not want anything sublime. Suddenly she screamed in pain, and Doha asked if she was still wounded somewhere. It turns out there were fragments from the window stuck on her feet. Doha went down to her feet and asked if she really wanted to leave everything as it was. She thought that she didn't want to look like this in Doha's eyes. He should only see beautiful things in his life. When Doha left, Larry came to Asher and said that after the treatment, she was already much better. Asher said he was worried that it might be too much for her, but he took off his shirt anyway. After that, Asher sat down on the bed next to her, and Larry began to treat his upper body. And finally, she said that she was done with cleansing the upper body. He was able to get closer to being cleansed of the curse. Asher looked at his body, and seeing that it was cleansed, he shed tears and said that he was very grateful to her. Larry said that it was too early for joy, and very soon she would completely clear him of the curse. To celebrate, she said that she could now clean his lower body. And realizing what she said, she became embarrassed and wondered how she should do this, because she would need to take off her pants. She nervously said that the cleansing took a long time this time, so she wanted to rest. And Asher replied that his lower body was fine. This only made the guys hear it more, but it seems they are talking about different things. Larry turned away embarrassedly and thought that he could have told her about this earlier. Then she returned to her chambers and lay on the bed, thinking that so much had happened today. She has someone to thank: Asher, Doha, and Anne, and Mr. Jill for helping her escape. Larry wanted to take them away from there, but how could she bring them here if she herself was leaving the mansion soon? She regretted that all these years she had foolishly sacrificed herself for the sake of her family, and if she had not been terminally ill, she would have continued to live, allowing herself to be used. She paid a high price for happiness, which is why she does not want to die. She loves his caring and subtle jealousy, as well as his sweet side that only she knows. Larry admitted that she really loves Asher, but she does not think that he has such stronger feelings. Therefore, for sure, he will not be very upset after her death. And in the future, he will only remember her, a fleeting girl for 3 months. Suddenly, thunder roared, and Larry left her thoughts about Asher when she saw a thunderstorm, and her father appeared in front of her, swinging at her. Of course, it was just an illusion. She got scared and ran out of her room and asked to be saved, and ran to Escher's room. Asher said that it was cold in the corridor and opened the door for her to come in. She was shaking, and they sat on the sofa. He offered her tea. It had not been brought yet, but after that, she could drink it with him. Seeing her condition, Asher asked if she was still injured somewhere, and Larry replied that she was simply terribly afraid of thunderstorms. Not even the sound itself, but the loneliness that he feels in such weather. Asher listened to her and hugged her, because she continued to shake. Suddenly, the thunder boomed with renewed vigor, so loudly that Larry jumped into Asher's arms in fright. It was hard for Asher to see how his beloved was afraid, and he hugged her tightly in order to somehow help her. While Asher hugged Larry, he remembered how during the war one of his knights, dying, begged her to save him. After sitting in silence for a while, Larry asked Asher if she could sleep with him tonight, just holding hands. She hesitantly said that it was okay if she couldn't. She could just sleep alone in her room, and apologized for her strange request. But Asher pulled her towards him and said that she could stay with him, and so they lay down in the same bed together, and Larry decided to calm him down, saying that she was not going to do anything like that. But then she started pointing her finger at him, trying to tease him, and Asher stopped her and told her not to touch him if she wanted him to restrain himself. She tries not to show it, but she is scared and pretends that everything is fine with her. Asher wondered why she continued to endure everything alone and could not rely on him. He would like to share his experiences with her, and then maybe he too will be able to calm down. Meanwhile, at Larry's father's estate, dishes were breaking and screams were heard. He asked why no one was coming to them, and the butler replied that they had recontacted the temple, but there were no free priests. Immediately after Larietta's abduction, Jared said that the lady had a lot of injuries, which she certainly didn't have yesterday. The Marquis thought that if he didn't want to become famous as a despot who beat his own daughter, now it would be better to just let her go. And while they were talking, Jared noticed Rayan coming down the stairs, who also noticed Jared. Rayan fell and broke both his legs. The man thought that Larietta's powers would be useful now she is not there when she is so needed. And he had no choice but to go to the temple himself, where he was already shouting for the priests to help them. Just then, Doha came, who was already waiting for his turn to recoup. By the way, Larry's father knew very well that Doha was the next dad. Therefore, I decided that it was not worth conflicting with the person who would occupy such an honorable place. However, Rayan, who had no manners, began to be rude to him. This was quickly stopped by the Duke, apologizing for his son's tactlessness. The Duke said that his son was in dire need of treatment. They came here out of extreme necessity. It was Doha who did not allow any of the priests to go to them, but he told them that there seemed to be some kind of misunderstanding. Doha told them that, as an apology, he would personally treat his son. The Duke's eyes shone at this offer, because even Duke Candle cannot boast of receiving treatment directly from the supervising father. He was already planning to build a relationship with the next pope, so he wanted to glorify his family again. Before Rayan went after Doha, his dad told him not to embarrass him. They went into another hall, and Doha asked how he got injured, and Rayan replied that he tripped. Then Doha abruptly grabbed his hand and asked where he got this injury. Seeing the bite mark, he thought that even Larry's bite looked cute. Doha decided that he should not leave a single trace of Larry on him, and Rayan, instead of thanking him, called him a guy of despicable origin. He asked if he knew what rumors were circulating about him, calling him a shameless asshole. He meant that Doha was the son of a fallen courtesan. This did not hurt him at all, and Doha said that Duke Candle did a bad job. Doha came closer and asked how he dared in ignorance to encroach on someone who should not have been touched. He should not expect mercy from him. At the very least, he should deprive him of his limbs, and that would not be the most severe punishment, Doha said. Rayan tried to hit Doha, and of course failed. As always, he blamed everyone else for everything. This even made Doha laugh. Doha asked if he really thought that a guy with a despicable background would not escape his unlucky attack. He said that this was nothing compared to what he had to endure to survive, and Round said that he was dizzy. Rayan started whining about what he did to him. Doha calmly sat down and said that he just slightly disturbed his mana cycle. If everything lags behind as it is, then in a few months the flow of mana in his body will not be able to withstand it, and he will die, just like Larry. Only with him everything is for real. Doha was only amused by this, and he continued to say that healing is impossible for anyone who is not stronger than him, and of course such people do not exist. He threatened that he needed to quickly turn on his brains to young Mr. Blanchet, and Rayon began to go into hysterics, thinking that he did not want to die. So, all his arrogance disappeared, and he asked what he needed to do, and Doha replied that if he raised his hand to Larry, he would die that day. But back to our couple, Larry woke up and saw Asher, who had already gotten up. Larry thought that seeing such a beautiful face in the morning was the best thing in the world. Larry noticed that he looked a little tired and asked if he slept well, if he had at least slept for a few hours. Of course, Asher couldn't sleep, but he told her that nothing had happened and asked what she planned to do today. She said that she was going to go to Doha, and now she would sleep only with Asher. The latter really confused our shy one. Of course she was joking, and we were shown the reason why Asher could not sleep the whole night. He thought that he could not bear this again. Asher hurried and left the room, where the butler was already waiting for him, who was already happily saying that he had always believed that one day this day would come. He asked what dishes to prepare for the wedding banquet, what date the ceremony would be scheduled for, and everything like that. He could no longer be stopped. Asher shut him up and asked him to stop when he started talking about the baby's room. Hallstein said that marriage is an important event for a person. They should not treat it with negligence. However, Asher thought it was funny. He believed that no one would want to connect their life with someone like him. But he would look forward to it, to marry her, to enter into a marriage bond. Asher would have sworn that he was ready to spend eternity with her, but of course it was too early for that now. He turned and said that he had not yet done anything for which he needed to take responsibility, then added that he had work to do, so he needed to quickly prepare to leave. This shocked the butler Hallstein, who decided that Escher was too naive to understand everything, because he had spent his entire life on the battlefield. And Hallstein decided that he needed to help the master. It seems he had already begun to build his plan, and Larry decided to come to Doha's temple. She said that she came to see a friend, and the priest asked what the rank of her friend was, and Larry answered that she was the lowest. She began to describe what Doha looked like, and Joshua, who was running as fast as he could, said that he would accompany her. Larry thought that he was a low-ranking priest, but lived in such luxurious chambers, she assumed that he earned little. Doha quickly changed his clothes and ran to her, asking what she was doing here. Larry replied that it was a surprise. Larry said that she wanted to thank him for yesterday's treatment, and she also had a request for him. Doha was already upset when he thought that she still became friends with him for personal gain. But Larry asked him to teach her how to use her magic. Divine power and mana are similar in nature. It deals with the magic of purification. She said that she was never taught how to use magic, so she couldn't handle it properly. Larry doesn't want to remain as helpless as she is. She wants to stand up for herself. She said that he is the only one she can turn to, so she can only entrust her training to him. Doha replied that he agreed, but in return he would ask him to fulfill his request later, and cunningly asked if she would fulfill it no matter what it was. Larry said that he sounded like a fraud, and asked what if his request was to write his name on his butt, and then dance or sing in the street. Doha laughed and agreed that the contract should be fair, and suggested that it be agreed that it would be a request within her capabilities. And the rest will be decided by Larry's conscience, Doha added, and asked whether the conditions he offered were normal enough. And Larry agreed. And she happily asked how about starting training today. Doha thought that he was interested in Larry. He would like to get close to her and learn everything about her. In the end, he may lose interest, but he always starts the meal with something tasty. And when he was about to agree, Joshua came to them and announced that they were waiting for him. Doha realized that the current dad had come, and he apologized to Larry, and she replied that she herself had come so unexpectedly, and it was not his fault. He said that he would soon come to visit her soon. When they left, Doha thanked the elder for his chambers. Poor Joshua was already completely confused. Larry thought that he had a really difficult situation since he even borrowed a room. A naive girl, she decided that she would no longer come to him so unexpectedly. And while Joshua and Doha waved at her, Doha whispered that he was playing poorly. Joshua replied that he was still far from Mikhail's skill, and Doha said that this is the main skill of those who serve the temple. Then they returned to their work. Joshua said that High Priest Hybral was looking for him, and Doha complained that he would again stick to him with his nagging. Doha thought that perhaps the current dad is not in the best condition. He wants to talk about his becoming the next one. Memorizing this will be a test. Returning home, Larry jumped into Asher's arms, saying that they came at the same time. It seemed like fate. Asher was embarrassed and thought that the day was boring, but as soon as he saw Larry, he immediately felt happy. He thought he felt this way because she was a purification wizard. He decided that maybe she had cleansed his hearts of troubles. And then the butler began his plan, saying that he had assigned the new maids to wash the blankets, but they were still not dry. Continuing his game, Holstein said that the gentleman's blanket was fine, but the lady's blanket was different. But Escher offered to buy a new one right away, and Hallstein lied that they called all the boutiques, but they did not find anything suitable for the duchy, and it would take several days to supply new ones. He didn't stop and said that they couldn't give the lady a low-quality blanket. Asher thought that was nonsense and ordered that they just give her his blanket. Things didn't go the way Holstein wanted when Larry said that then he would sleep without a blanket. And Asher replied that everything was fine. It was a cold night and she might catch a cold without a blanket. And then Hallstein finally suggested that they lie down together. Larry replied that this was a good idea, but after seeing Asher's reaction, she asked if he really didn't want to sleep together. Asher only became more embarrassed and began to say that he was not against it in any way. But Larry interrupted him and said that she wanted to eat. He thought that he would bear with it for now. Everything would be fine. Asher believed that he should not worry too much. Night came. Asher was worried and walked in circles in doubt, and Larry came to Asher's room joyful with a delicious gift. They sat down at the table, and Asher asked if she was going to eat it right now. Larry immediately answered that she liked sweets and asked if he knew what kind of cream it was. She asked if he liked whipped cream, and Asher replied that he did, although he had never tried it before. Then he fed Larry a piece of cake. Having gotten dirty, she decided to wipe everything with a napkin so as not to embarrass Asher. Otherwise, he would simply run away. But Asher pulled her towards him and asked if it wasn't her lover who should wipe it off. When Asher kissed her, Larry looked at him and thought he looked as if he was going to eat her. Larry stopped him, saying that was enough. But Asher kissed her again, saying that he was still hungry. Kissing her for a while, he stopped and smiled and said that now he seemed to be full. Then she jumped on the bed and said that she needed to quickly finish the cleansing. Asher also lay down with her and asked what would happen next, but Larry only wished him good night. Asher watched her sleep and thought that if she continued to be next to him, he would not be able to hide his greed and his ugly possessiveness. Unexpectedly for Asher, Larry pulled him towards her and hugged him and called him hers. Asher blushed and thought that he needed to get out. But as soon as he tried to do this, Larry threw her leg over him, stopping him. Asher could no longer stand it and begged for help. The next morning, Larry looked joyful and rested, which cannot be said about Asher, who was suffering all night. In front of Larry's table, she found a letter from the butler, in which he wrote that it had rained heavily in the morning, so the blanket never dried. It looks like they will have to sleep together for a couple more days, and breakfast will be brought to their room. While Larry was satisfied, Asher was already dreaming of being killed. On the fourth day, Asher finally fell asleep, and now Larry watched him, and thought that even when he was sleeping, he was so handsome, a national treasure. It seems Asher is tormented by nightmares. He continued to ask for help and call his mother. Larry heard rumors about Asher. The Duke and his wife died when Asher was still a very young boy, and distant relatives immediately attacked the family's wealth and power, while Asher was fighting on the battlefield with a cursed body. Larry patted his head, thinking that after going through such difficult events at such a young age, all she could do was save him from the curse. She decided that it was imperative to cleanse him, both body and mind. She would give him opportunities, the ability to live the daily joyful life that others live, even when she is no longer around. It seems she said the last words out loud. As Ash heard them and immediately woke up, he took her hand and asked what she just said. He said he heard her say she was going to leave him, but Larry pretended she didn't know what he was talking about, and Ash thought he was imagining things. Larry reassured him, and he asked her to stay by his side, and Larry agreed, and she thought that she was glad that he only felt sympathy for him and not love. She thought that she would be sorry to part with him, and until the contract ended she would remain with him. Morning came, and Asher thought that he seemed to have had a good dream, but he didn't remember it. Larry hugged him from behind and asked if he slept well, and said that seeing his condition, it seemed like it was time to cleanse his lower body. She stood up and said that she would do the lower body cleansing next time, since she was going to Madame Sherbet, and asked if he was going to the imperial castle. Asher thought that there might be a war with the Danube kingdom, which would prevent them from spending time together, and Larry asked to do something with her, and Asher asked what she suspected of something. Asher was a little embarrassed, but thought that it was unlikely that she would ask for something strange and agreed, but he didn't know what big plans Larry had made, such as swimming, visiting hot springs. Larry came to Madame Sherbet in the afternoon, and as always, Jared was watching her. He is a trained fighter and commander, but Asher ordered him to guard Larry. Madame apologized for the letter she had sent and said that they had decided to no longer accept representatives of the Blanche family as guests. Of course, Larry was an exception. They went into a boutique. Larry thought that Blanche's family had no money left anyway, so they wouldn't be able to afford such boutiques. She noticed that someone was already sitting in the reception area. Larry told Madame that he could come next time, but the girl said that there was no need to leave, and then she added that they had not seen each other for a long time. Larry greeted Her Highness the Princess. It was awkward to meet her like this. Princess Elizabeth Harrison. One day, the Emperor chose Rayon among the rushed applications for an engagement to the princess at that time. The Blanchet family had not lost its influence, so Rayon was a worthy match for the princess. But, of course, his character betrayed itself. He declared that the princess had turned her nose up too much, and Elizabeth asked if he was somehow better than her. She confidently approached him and said that he was more like a child who was afraid to fight with her and lose. And when he dared to shout that it didn't matter if she was stronger than him because she would still become his wife, and the princess quickly showed who was the boss. Thus, the engagement was broken off, after which Larry did not see her for about 5 years. because she avoided her. But the princess had changed so much in 5 years. Elizabeth said that she did not want to burden her. She did not know that she and Madame Sherbet were so close. Larry thought that her name was no longer on the family registry anyway, so everything related to it did not apply to her. Elizabeth asked how Madame could have hidden such a person from her, and she said that she was now obliged to get to know Lady Larietta better. The princess approached Larry and told her that she could just call her Eliza. Her beauty even influenced Larry. At karate, Larry was worried that she wouldn't be here after a while anyway. But she kept making promises like that. She agreed to meet the girls and talk. She was sad, because this was the first time this had happened to her. Such good things happened when she was already on the verge of death. In any case, she will have to go on a journey and die quietly so that no one notices. She slowly fell asleep, and suddenly Doha opened the carriage door. Waking up Larry, he asked why she still hadn't gotten out. Doha helped her down and said that this place has a special energy. There is a fast and pure flow of mana here. This is the best place to practice. And now he asked to use magic, as she usually does. Larry was a little doubtful, but still started. She was using earth magic, and Doha thought it was a waste of mana, like throwing out all the water from a bathtub just to put out the candles. Doha took her hand and told her to put mana into his body. She would need to monitor its flow. He showed the amount of mana that would be enough to perform the action that she had previously done. Larry used her magic again, but again she overdid it. Seeing branches falling on Doha, she jumped in to save him. Doha thought that even though he is much stronger and more experienced than her, she always tries to save him. Making sure that he is okay, Larry said that she seems to be a genius. He agreed, but added that she still had a lot to learn. She did not yet know how to attack with magic over long distances. What to do in dangerous situations, where to aim, how to escape in general, to study and study. Larry happily asked the teacher to teach her everything. In the evening, Larry went home. Even after 1 day of training, she feels that she is improving in controlling mana. Doha thought how they could not train a person with such abilities, although she herself was still not particularly interested in this. He felt something and wondered if her abilities really aroused such a strong interest in him, because usually by this time he becomes bored. Doha then told Larry that there was a festival going on in Isis. Isis is a small town not far from the capital. While he was talking about what was there, Larry interrupted him, saying that this place was perfect for her date with Asher. She left, thanking him for today's lesson, and added that she was lucky to have such a friend. Doha said goodbye and immediately became depressed when she left, because he wanted to go to the festival with her alone. He was very annoyed. Larry came to Asher's room and told him that she had good news. Namely, a flower festival is held in Isis, and she asked me to go there with her tomorrow. Asher was less optimistic and reminded her of his curse, then asked if that should be what was bothering her now. Larry asked when they could go there once she had him completely clean. Then she opened his shirt. She poked him and said that the curse was no longer in the upper part of the body. Then she asked if they could still go to the festival. Larry explained that she was not imposing her wishes on him, but they would be able to go to the night market and wear masquerade masks. And she still managed to convince Asher to go to this festival. They put on cute masks. She said that later they could go to the square, but for now, they still have time to walk. Asher noticed that here they looked at him differently, not with fear or hatred. People looked at him with interest. Noticing this, Asher surprised Larry by saying that he would like to take a bite of it from her too, and pulled her towards him and kissed her. Larry wasn't happy about this. She hit him a couple of times, saying that you shouldn't do that in public, and just left him. She was angry and wondered when he learned to seduce so skillfully, but then she thought that they had already arrived and decided to return, but she noticed how a girl approached Asher and offered to dance together. While Asher refused the girl, Larry became worried and started running away again, thinking that if she left, Asher would fall in love with another woman. She thought that all she wanted was Asher's happiness. She decided that she couldn't be jealous. At that moment, a guy approached her and offered her a drink. He explained that he had recently bought it and was just about to sign it. He showed that there was nothing wrong with the drink by drinking a little. Then Larry took off her mask and thanked him for his help. When the guy saw Larry's face, he frankly said that it looked like it was love at first sight. His frankness surprised Larry, and she immediately told him that she already had a lover. The guy said that he was told that residents in the capital very harshly refused to meet him. This turned out to be true. She noticed that he spoke with a Western accent, and he sat down and said that even if he was rejected, he had to make it right. The guy again admitted that he fell in love with her at first sight, with her incredible beauty. He asked to accept his friendship. Larry was only more surprised, thinking that such a recognition was relevant 15 years ago. Unexpectedly, Asher approached them and immediately pointed his sword at him, which he was able to fight off. Asher said that to say such things to his beloved, apparently he was tired of living. The guy replied that he did not want to die and asked Larry if he was her lover. Looking at Asher, he said that he looked better. Of course, Larry shouted that he was talking complete nonsense, which surprised both guys. She then became truly angry and activated her ability, ordering him to remove his sword from her lover immediately. Asher became embarrassed, and the guy stood up and apologized and said that he didn't know that this was really his lover. The guys put away their swords, and the stranger said that he thought it was a lie, otherwise he would not have confessed. She approached Asher and said that whether it was true or not, a refusal is still a refusal. Larry called him a smartass in an alpaca mask. Then the guy apologized again and left, and Asher hugged Larry and asked why she left him. Asher was already upset, thinking what if she accepted his confession, but Larry interrupted him, saying that she was simply not easily lost. She thanked him for finding her. Then Asher asked if she was waiting for him, and Larry replied that she already missed him. Larry hugged him and asked if he was surprised by her sudden disappearance, and added that something like this would not happen again. While they were having a nice conversation, music started playing in the distance, and Larry said that it seemed like it was time to dance. But Asher reminded them that they had both lost their masks, and Larry replied that it would be a hassle, so it was probably better to go home. However, Asher said that everything was fine, and Larry, surprised, said that this might attract unnecessary attention, but Asher still asked her to dance. Our couple came to the square. The festival is different from a social ball, it looks much freer. And Larry pulled him into the dance center and invited him to start dancing. Asher was so sweetly happy, thinking that he did not expect such a day to come. Without the smell of decaying corpses, without the looks of people where disgust and fear were mixed, without the feeling that he was superfluous because he was different from other people. Asher thought that it was Larietta who gave him a new life. She gave him the opportunity to live as an individual. She gave him a chance to live as a normal person and not a monster. He couldn't even dream that even a monster like him could dance in front of everyone. Despite such an inept dance, she looks at him with love. Of course, he fell in love with her. Larry said that she loved him, and Asher also said that he loved her.